Welcome to Rico 12. I'm Justin, your host and a beautifully imperfect, stumbling, bumbling child of an absolutely powerful and perfectly loving God and an addict in recovery. Rico 12 is all about exploring the common threads of addictions and sharing tools and hope from those on a similar path. We gather from diverse backgrounds, faiths, and places to learn and support one another. Our speakers represent various fellowships, addictions, and afflictions, thus showing the common threads of recovery no matter our addiction. Today's speakers for the 251st meeting are Kevin and Angie H., who have both been speakers previously on Rico 12, individually and as a couple. And I enjoy having these talks with couples who are walking through recovery together and share their experience, strength, and hope together. I look forward to hearing their message on their chosen topic entitled, You Were Stronger Than My Lust, here in a few minutes. But first, for just a little bit of business. Rico 12 has several recovery resources in our family of podcasts and social media communities. To learn more, listen more, connect more, or just hang out and learn and grow with us, you can check out the other podcast, Noodle It Out with Nikki M, which releases every Tuesday, the Big Book Roundtable, which releases every Thursday. And to learn more about these podcasts, I'll put the information in the chat. I'll also put it in the show notes of the podcast. And to join in our social communities, our WhatsApp community, Facebook, Instagram, whatever we have, I'll also put that information in the show notes and in the chat. Rico 12 is self-supporting, and your contributions help us continue our mission. Thanks this week to Evan, Joanna, and Marta, and to all who are or have been contributors to Rico 12 and for being spearheads and supporting the Rico 12 cause. To support Rico 12 and become a spearhead, visit www.rico12.com/support or click on the links that I'll have in each of these places. Your support does make a difference in keeping us being able to share these messages of recovery. We look forward each meeting to receiving from the light reflected from our speakers. That light inspires hope, meaning, worth, and growth in us, the listening audience. Now I'm going to introduce our guest speakers for today, Angie and Kevin, and give a little background on them. Angie H. is from Missouri and has a March 16th of 2015 SA and AA sobriety date and does a ton of program service, including being a phone meeting moderator, helping to start a local meeting that's going strong, doing phone and Zoom speaker shares like this one today, being a keynote SA speaker in the Golden, Colorado Mother Cabrini Retreat in 2019. Angie also formed a local SA group fellowship in her area and was a committee member and a co-chair for many, many events, including the upcoming International SA Conference in Dallas, Texas in 2025. Angie sponsors and has a sponsor and has hosted several hundred recovery people in her home on the Serenity Farm over the last several years. Angie continues to have spiritual awakenings and live happy, joyous, and free while living in the steps and practicing her program principles in all her affairs. Now, Kevin first came into S&On on the 18th of May of 2015, and he is also very involved in program service at all levels. He started a local S&On meeting, chaired the International Convention in St. Louis in 2018, has started with God's Grace an International Men's S&On WhatsApp group with several hundred members. He is a member of the Board of Trustees as a regional trustee for the Midwest in S&On, and he is also the chairperson of the upcoming 2025 International Convention in Dallas for S&On. And he is always talking with hundreds of newcomers in S&On while sponsoring about 18 men there. Take it away, Angie and Kevin. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Justin. It's great to be here again. So in March, celebrated 9 years in recovery, and Kevin and I were sitting having lunch in our kitchen, and we were just chatting about the past and our recoveries and different things. And I'm a firm believer in God's grace and how He works and speaks in my life. And all of a sudden, out of my mouth came, "I'm glad that you are stronger than my lust." And he looked at me and he was like, "Wow, that was really profound." And I'm like, I was just having casual conversation. But the more I thought about it and the more we talked about it, it was very enlightening to part of my journey. Actually, my entire journey, as a matter of fact. And so, when I said that statement, what I was thinking was that, being having a spouse um, that joined recovery with me, and a spouse that has a very strong spiritual life, and a spouse that helps other people, that's kind of where I was thinking at that moment. But then as we started chatting and I started looking back to my journey and how I ended up where I am at today, I come from a home where there was sexual abuse. And I swore, I would take that to my grave. And then, after years of lusting and acting out and just being at a very low bottom, those after discovery, things started coming out. And once I realized how lust, infiltrated my life, how it infiltrated our marriage, my way of thinking, my actions, then I started thinking, oh my gosh, this is way bigger than just an addiction. And so when I looked back, I started thinking about, the first time that I met Kevin. And what I want to share first is that I truly believe God puts people in our lives. And, whether I'm ready at that point in time to be ready for what God has for me at that moment, of course, that's a choice. And I did live in self will for a very long time. Thankfully, today I try and listen to God's voice and His will for me. But what that looked like for me was I was going to leave my childhood home and go spend the summer with my abuser in a different state. And he showed up on my doorstep as a blind date, and we hung out for a bit. And after a couple of weeks, he's like, why don't you just stay back for the summer? And so, I'm sure my lust had a good, strong place in that decision on staying back, but it was stronger than, and whatever I had in front of me as, this person that I just met. And he had lots of things that I wanted. And I knew that he would be really good for me. And so the point was is that at that point is what I was thinking about when I said, I'm glad that you are stronger than my lust, meaning that he asked me to stay. I decided. And, it was like, all right, that was like the first thing, stronger than my lust, right? And so then many, many years into marriage, we you know, I was an active addict, but I knew that he was a very strong point in my life, and that, even though we didn't always connect, we still were very connected. And so then I started thinking about this topic of being stronger than my lust. And what I realized was that not only having a spouse in recovery with me, but ultimately, it was just realizing and again, knowing that my higher power is stronger than my lust. And so when I really started working a recovery program, and I like to say that I live my steps. What that looks like is I know when I need to look at myself. I know that when I'm powerless over something, I know that, am I choosing to do what I want to do, or am I trying to overstep what God wants me to do and still make a decision? But ultimately, I know now that on my spiritual journey that God was stronger than my lust. And that's really what I want to focus on today, is because even though at the beginning I was thinking just in human form, I'm glad you were stronger than my lust because, you stayed married to me and we made it through this. Then I started realizing that, God's role in all of this. And so it's just really been the last probably 3 years that my spiritual journey really kicked off, maybe 5. I mean, I believed in a power greater than myself, and I was growing and absorbing as much of the recovery process that I could. And then after a time, things started to not become so challenging with just accepting what the 12 steps were. But it's like I said earlier, it became a way of life for me. And so the last few years has really been a spiritual journey for me in, daily prayer and the consistency that we as a couple work together. We have routines and very consistent with doing prayer time in the morning, prayer time at night. We talk to each other during the day on letting each other know where we are. And, the whole thing with God with skin on, I really believe that that's to be true with the people in my life and also with my spouse. And so the spiritual journey has just, I've talked to people in recovery, and sometimes they say, I'm bored with my recovery, I'm complacent. Um, I just don't feel like I'm growing. And I do know that from my own experience that when I am continually seeking my spiritual path, that it is not boring and it is every day it changes and presented with new ways to look at things and new awarenesses. And so God is definitely stronger than my lust, and that becomes the 12 steps for me. I recognize that I'm powerless over that, and it's not perfect. I don't have a perfect recovery. I don't have a perfect marriage. I don't have perfect relationships, nor do I desire that, because I know now that when I am suffering, that is an opportunity to get closer to the God of my understanding. Kevin and I were talking the other day, about surrendering and how backwards it is to think about. But what we've been chatting about is the whole idea of to surrender. If I win, if I surrender to win, which is completely opposite of where I would have come from before, not knowing that by giving up and fully surrendering whatever I'm going through at that moment actually gives me the life of happy, joyous, and free. Otherwise, I'm stuck somewhere in my head or whatever. And when I talk about, not having a perfect recovery or perfect marriage, I still experience lust, even 9 years in. Usually mine's triggered by fear, something that's rolling around in my brain, which I know now is, my own and non issues. And, or I'm trying to control something, trying to manage something, trying to fix it. There's a conflict of some sort. And so I know that when fear comes up, a lot of times it's subconscious and I don't even know that I'm dwelling on something or I'm afraid of something, but I get busy with my program and get busy in surrendering what is going on in my life at that moment that's causing me disease or discomfort. And that's part of my spiritual journey. These 12 steps for me are a great roadmap. They help me to practice a good, healthy life, a good spiritual life. I put it into place with my interactions with all people, work, family, kids. I can know when I need to step back, when I'm powerless over the situation. I know that I can look at myself and see, what's my wrong here? A quick 4-step inventory. I can continually work on my uh, character defects. In fact, we were in a meeting last night. It was really cute. We were talking about step 7, and we were comparing it to a computer. Like when you get emails you don't want anymore, you click unsubscribe, And the share was about, well, I want to unsubscribe to this character defect because sometimes those emails just keep coming back every day and it's incredibly annoying. And I just thought that that was a really cute way of looking at, surrendering and, okay, I still have this defect today, but I'm going to unsubscribe to it. I don't want it anymore. I love that. And so, yeah, I'm just very grateful. I live in a place of serenity. In the introduction, we were talking about the Serenity Farm, and we have had hundreds of people come to our home, spend the weekend. We do a lot of retreats in our area, well, twice a year, and it's just kind of turned into a pre-retreat recovery. And one of the people that came to our farm said, I love coming here because there's a lot of peace and serenity here. And for that, I'm very grateful because it wasn't like that prior to recovery. And I'll just, kind of end with this, yes, we've been married. We're on our 38th year this year, and which is totally God's grace. I do share with couples a lot and with individuals that we did everything we could to destroy this marriage. And through God's grace, 12 steps, being open, willingness, honest, consistent, daily, continue to grow as a couple. And we love to share that with others to give them hope and to know that, this is a journey. This whole life thing is a journey. And I consider it, a test run for whatever spiritual life is next. So with that, I will pass to Kevin. Thanks.
Let me set my timer here. Hi, I'm Kevin H., proud member of S-Anon. I'm going on, just 9 years, just a few days ago. S-Anon has saved my life, period. I got really emotional when she said stronger than my lust. So I'm talking to all the Anons now. When anybody comes to you and you're presented with any addiction that is affecting your body, you have choices. And so let me first start where our bottom was for me. At one time in our early journey, I was crazy, controlling, managing, fixing.
You're still on. You're still good.
Okay, good. Sorry.
I was just crazy trying to control, manage, and fix. And what happened was, my wife, one time I was coming home, she got 3 of my brothers to come to the house. I came home from work. I walked to the front door. 2 of my brothers was in my house, and she was going to kick me out of the house. And my 3rd brother was outside with a gun on me. She was controlling her side of the street. And she was still heavy in her addiction side. They didn't know that. They just all thought that I was the bad guy, which I was a bad guy, by the way. So that was a real bottom for me, being kicked out of my house and my brothers against me. For me, I was in the military. I was a pilot in the military. So when Angie said just then that the main cornerstone of recovery is we have to surrender to win, I mean, talking to a military dude, I mean, it just makes no sense. I have to surrender to win. Makes no sense in my brain. So I really had to do a lot of heavy lifting there. And then if you really want to really throw it in, and God bless all men in S-Anon, being a man in S-Anon with a spouse that you come from that side of the street, the pride, the feelings you go through, it's just extremely difficult. So here was kind of my understanding at the very beginning. For me, stronger than my lust. Okay, so I come into it when I find out and I have this feeling of hate. I mean, it's just hate for anybody that was affected her that she was with and everything. What is hate? It's a feeling of revulsion against evil, which brings coldness towards someone. What I love about Essanon, it has fantastic literature, but what it does, it gives hope. And hope is a feeling of a confident experience which one can achieve. Okay, so now I have this hatred in my body and I'm experiencing hope out there. I think that's the most that anybody can give to another person, a newcomer that can walk in the door, is hope. And I know we say it all the time, experience strength, but really having that understanding of what does hope look like. Okay, so once I dive down a little bit below that on how, I had to overcome lust was, okay, so my God gives me the understanding of forgiveness or failure to forgive. I have that choice right there. And I can keep someone bound in condemnation. My wife here, I can keep her in that and or judgment. But forgiveness, what it does, it releases me from the chains of guilt and shame. And it releases her from the chains of guilt and shame. So, that's when I started having a new understanding of what mercy looks like, of what using the tools of Essanon looks like, boundaries. Then I could understand what forgiveness looks like. I don't have to like the addict, but I can always love that true, authentic woman that I used to love. And, the next thing for me is once I have forgiveness and I show mercy and I'm loving and kind, there's a synonym out there in Essanon is how do you communicate? Can you communicate in a healthy way? Learning healthy communication. For me, once I started unraveling all this, it's all about being emotionally sober. Emotionally sober is where I want to be. And what does emotionally sober look like for me? I have 7 items that I say I challenge people for being emotionally sober. No assuming, no expectations, know your needs, no comparing, no you statements, talk from feelings, and stay in the moment. So no assuming, no expectations, know your needs, no comparing, no you statements, talk from feelings, and stay in the moment. And each one of these, for me, in my journey of being sober, is huge. No expectations. They always lead to premeditated resentments. Know my needs. What's that look like? Do I know what halts is? Hungry, angry, lonely, tired, sick, stressed. What's my body look like? Can I understand all that at all times of the day, every moment? No comparing. I have learned this. Everybody is in a different place in recovery. Everybody. I'm in a different place in recovery on emotional sobriety, and she's in a different, in SA. So we're never in the same spot. No use statements, and it's in our meeting guidelines in Essanon. It is not to have you, should have, would have, could have. We take all that out because what's that do? That gives shame to the next person. And I learned a long time ago, if I give my wife shame, that's when she goes into isolation, depression, and she goes off to her side of the street. Talking from feelings is huge for me, learning how to feel, and then just staying in the moment. So for me, emotional sobriety is having purity of heart. And what that looks like for me is knowing that I can stay in this moment throughout the whole day, not thinking of the past, not thinking of the future. And I can be with this journey with my wife, which in turn gives me a wonderful relationship with my higher power. I call it, I have that conscious contact with my higher power all the time. I'm so grateful for that. I have these pokes and nudges in my body. So, and then once we do that flushing out in step 4 and 5, like right now, I have no resentments, no fears, no dishonesties. I don't have any of that in my body. I consistently work that out. So stronger than my lust, I will tell you for the Anon, it's a lot of heavy lifting. It's a lot of work for us to really truly have that. I had a guy talk to me, an old timer. He's SA, and he was wanting to work Essanon, and he comes in there and he goes, "I have many, many, many years in SA," and he goes, "I thought I had a master's degree in recovery," and I told him my journey and kind of what I work on, and I said to him, "Tell me this: does your program, if somebody pulls in front of you and you're frustrated and it gives you into maybe an irritated or frustrated mode, do you call your sponsor about that?" He goes, "No." I go, "In my program, I'm taught to do that." That's that next level of emotional sobriety. Anytime I'm irritated or frustrated, I get it out of my body. He says, "Well, Kevin, that sounds like your level is like the PhD level of recovery." And I go, "You know what? I think Bill W. talked about that a little bit." So the other things I wanted to talk about is when we get caught or I start feeling like I'm going down the rabbit hole. I always challenge people to 90-90 when they first get into recovery. Always get a sponsor, call people, go to meetings, conferences, go to conferences. It's huge. But so let's say you've been in a program and you get knocked off your horse. What's a good way to get back on the horse? I challenge person, hey, why don't you do 14 and 14? 14 meetings, 14 days. Try to do something that can build that foundation in short order because we all get knocked off our horse, so this gives us the opportunity to rebuild something. We don't lose recovery. We don't lose our recovery. We just get set back in recovery. Um, I will tell you, once I start getting in a place of complacency, I actually pray for suffering. I ask God for suffering. And wow, I did that last year, and woof, it was a rough road. I kind of called him, I said, "Man, God, I don't know if I really want to do that road again." But suffering, if I feel like I'm complacent in my journey of recovery, I pray for suffering because I want to know the next shortcoming I can work on. There's always something I can always be working on. And, I'm just really grateful for Essanon. I'm grateful for my wife being in recovery. She's just been such a joy to watch her work SA and put her toes in Essanon. And, all the men in Essanon, it's so amazing. There's so many men out there that have fantastic recoveries going on, and they're helping so many other guys that's coming in the door and women as well. But man, it's just amazing. And I think I'm going to end with something from Bill W. Um, when I first got into recovery, I didn't understand the big book, nor did I really want to hear about it because I wanted Essanon stuff because Essanon has great literature. But now I so love the big book. And I love Bill W.'s quote when he says, when you come in, it's real simple. Trust God, clean house, help others. And I so live by that. That's all I want to do is just be of service to other people. And most importantly, all I want to do is learn how to love my wife, Angie, better. I want to learn how to love her better. I want to learn how to love my higher power better, my fellow brothers better. That's all I want to do. I just want to learn how to love other people better. So with that, I'll pass. Thank you.
Thank you both, Angie and Kevin. Great shares, great message of hope. I've written down several things here for questions. A reminder to our live audience, if you have questions for Kevin and Angie, please type them in the chat. We'll get to those. I'll ask those questions as we go along. There's just some really good stuff that both of you shared here. I want to start off with something that Angie said, and this goes to both of you because this involves both of you. What does that prayer together look like? You said, we pray together in the morning, we pray together in the evening. What does that look like? And how does that help you? And how would you, I don't know if teach is the right word, but invite others to do the same?
Yeah, this is Kevin. In the early days we wanted to start having time spent together. I noticed that was an area that we were broke in. So what we would do, we'd get up before we went to work and we'd both get a cup of coffee. And in the early days, she would read her daily meditation of her program, and I would read my daily meditation of my program out loud to one another. It's a real challenge in the early days because I don't want to hear that essay stuff. And then we would also read in there something biblical for that day. And then we would also turn around and read some, other literature that we could find that would be, helpful for our journey.
Mm-hmm. We do a lot of our own faith-based type prayers. I don't know if it's appropriate to say, but, we did a Bible in a year together every day. And so that really helped me on the growth of my spirituality. And like I said earlier, just being consistent. It's something, if we travel, like we're in our camper today, we take it with us, and we have podcasts that we can listen to spiritual. So yeah.
In particularly Rico 12 podcast.
Well, thank you for that. No, and it's absolutely appropriate to say whatever you're doing together. It works for you, and maybe somebody else out there might go, you know what, I'm going to give that a try. Absolutely, it's appropriate to mention.
So one other thing that I did, I was challenged by a spiritual director when I was really young in the program, is to make a little a spiritual thing on my desk. I call it a little altar in which I have something to remind me it's not Kevin's will throughout the day. So I have, a statue and a couple of beautiful quotes and proverbs and items that I lean into every minute of the day that I see that. And then at the end of the day, we've been saying a prayer for over 5 years together every single night. And it's just a prayer that takes about 8 to 10 minutes. And it's just us giving our love to our higher power and bringing us together. So, and another thing, just to let you know, in the first 27 years of our marriage, we didn't go to bed together. I worked, she went to bed at different hours. So we really had to rewire ourselves on what the end of the day looks like to be, working with one another and serving our higher power in a healthy way.
No, thank you for sharing those things. Those are very powerful ways of connecting and interacting. I think that's very healthy. Thank you for sharing that. But we got another question that came in from the live audience, but I want to do this real quick before we get to that. Angie, in your share, you talked about imperfection in your recovery, imperfection in sobriety. As a perfectionist, and I think many of us addicts are perfectionists, even though we're messes at keeping things perfect. How do you accept that imperfection in your sobriety, and what does that look like? What does imperfection look like?
So, yeah, thanks for that, Justin. I hit a little bit on fear, because that's usually my biggest trigger for lust. And so what that might look like is, let's say Kevin will call me and it's during the day, and I'm afraid he's going to ask me about who knows what, when in reality, he's not even thinking that at all. So that might be a trigger for me within the marriage. And so, to me, that's an imperfection for me. Knowing that the phone's ringing, I'm picking it up, I'm having a trigger before he even says anything. That's definitely coming from a place of fear. And so, I love, again, in the big book, we reference it quite often, acceptance is the answer. So I can accept the fact that I am still human. I still experience fear. I do experience lust. I do experience, those things, but I know that I don't have to stay there anymore. I know that I have a choice. I have tools. I don't have to react to those things. I can respond to those things. and try and do the next right action. And that was something I did a lot early in recovery and still do today when I feel a little bit lost. If I feel lost or disconnected from the God of my understanding, or in Kevin and my relationship with him, is that I can pray for the next right thing. Just simple little prayers that, help me get reconnected. But those would be, then I'll look to say something is perfect means that there's never anything wrong with it. And I'm human. There's going to be opportunities for me to learn, like he was talking when he was talking about, praying for suffering. I don't pray for suffering. I still get plenty on my own. And I told him last summer to quit including me in the suffering prayer because I have enough to deal with. And so, those are just opportunities, right, to grow. So I hope that helps.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I was going to ask about that, but I think we'll get to these other questions here. I've got a question that came in from Matt from our live audience. Matt says, Kevin, as a military guy, how might the concept of standing in the breach relate to your personal recovery?
That's a wonderful question, Matt. And for me, I think anybody who comes into recovery and they actually do trust God and clean house, the next thing is helping others. And that is standing in the breach. I think it's so important for some of us and to be, men and S&On is a new area that hasn't been around very long at such a high level of where it is. And there's so many men that's being affected by somebody else's sexual behavior. And if you are affected by somebody else's sexual behavior, that is the opening to join S&On. That's it. That's the gateway to come in. And for us to stand in the breach, it's being there, fighting off any demons that's trying to stop us to help other people, and be there for the next person that's raising his hand up and says, hey, I need a hand right now. It happened to me twice this last week. And, it's just so important for all of us that's in recovery to help that next person who can use an extra hand. So with that, I'll pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. And for those of us who may not be as militarily minded, can you define really quick what standing in the breach means, what that looks like?
Yeah, so what that means is it's the next person comes up and you're protecting, that area of that location or place or, of S&On. You're there at the gate to help a person come in the door. You're standing in the breach. It could be a windstorm out there with somebody else in the chaos of somebody else's life, but I'm standing right there at the doorway of S&On to pull somebody in.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's beautiful, beautiful imagery. All right, next question comes from, I hope I don't butcher this name, Verite, I think. Did either of you, and this may not apply as you were already married at this point, but let's take this question and talk about it. Did either of you follow a sober dating plan, or is this something you discussed together?
It's really interesting. No, we have done some work with sober dating, especially because we have 4 sons and one just got married. So we've brought recovery into our homes, which we really haven't talked about in this particular podcast. But one thing that we did do as far as being sober and helping for me to get sober was we did a period of abstinence. And that's basically what we would encourage our kids to do, or anyone that we're sponsoring, is to, be sexually chaste during that time. And we've experienced it in our own where, I needed to learn like what even lust looked like for me, and how the chemicals were affecting me and my decisions and in my sexuality with my husband. And so basically by removing any type of sexual interaction, then I was able to get a baseline and get back down to just like, a normal level of dopamine and whatever chemicals that my brain was producing to give me that lust hit. So that would be my experience. sober dating.
For S-Anon, I think two of the best tools we can have in our toolbox is abstinence, and number two is separation. Could be in-the-house separation, out-of-house separation. Those are wonderful tools that we have that we can use to help build our. So what are we trying to protect? We're trying to protect our emotional sobriety. That's it. That's what I work on every minute of the day. And those areas can really help us. And yeah, the sober dating is a big thing. We have 4 boys. They're all in recovery. At one of our last conferences we went to, 3 of them was in her, no, all 4 boys was in her meeting, breakout session with her. And I had a daughter-in-law in one of my breakout sessions. So grateful of recovery. So with that, I'll pass.
Very interesting. I want to follow up a little bit on that. So, Angie, you talked about that abstinence period that you guys did and practiced, and that you recommend to newcomers to doing that. Is there a time period that you typically recommend for that? In that, and what does that? How do you? I think I'll start there. Let's start at the time period and see where this goes.
Okay, so part of my journey here, I did have a lot of therapy and I did go to treatment. And so when I got back, they really required me to sign a contract that said 90 days to start. And we had very specific boundaries. And basically, it was absolutely nothing below the waist and no kissing and anything that would lead to any type of, sexual interaction with one another. So we basically learned to hold hands and communicate and touch in a healthy way, a healthy tickle. And so for me, I had lived 40 years with lust that it ended up being about 9 months for me of, no physical contact in that way with our boundaries. And after 3 months, we each would pause and talk about it and see, where are you? Do you feel safe? And after the first round, he didn't feel safe with me because we were going through a lot of emotional work. And, that at 5 months, I didn't feel, physically or emotionally, spiritually safe. And so that's kind of how we judged it. And we had help. We didn't just work on this by ourselves. Like I said, we had a lot of support on the outside kind of guiding us on what that would look like.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Kevin, you mentioned a couple of tools, separation being one of those. How do you implement those boundaries, those tools, without it being punishing or shame-inducing to the other? Or is that something you don't even consider? You're worried about your own emotional sobriety? Talk to me about that.
Okay, so in-house separation or out-of-the-house separation is not something that. First of all, look at your motivation. What's your motivation? It's to protect my emotional sobriety. If that's what's protecting my emotional sobriety, I need a time period where I can get away from all the chaos of what's going on just to work on myself and connect with my higher power. I got to have that space. And so sometimes it just gives you enough space where God can come in and have more clarity in an area. And each area, each person, each that I've chatted with is different. If they have young kids, I mean, there's just so many different things that, could be challenging in that area. But I have noticed it's just really, a wonderful tool that we have.
Thank you. All right, we've got a few more questions that have come in. So one of these is, so the person says, I'm not sure I want to sponsor someone. I'm not getting clear direction from God. How do I know if and how to sponsor another person in program?
First, I would ask my sponsor, what's your thoughts about me sponsoring? Second is if you feel like you have that nudge to do it, in Men and Essanon, we actually have a group me of guys that sponsors other people. So if somebody comes in and says, hey, I want to sponsor, they put it out there in this one group of guys that sponsors who's the next man up to help the next person out there. Number two, another way to do it, you could go to the WSO or SACO and put your name on that area and just be a newcomer greeter, just listening to people. I think that's another wonderful place, is the newcomer greeter or the welcomer, and just listen to people if you're not quite there for sponsoring.
Something that I do is, number one, know that, when I start a journey, to let that person know now that I'm a temporary sponsor, because, sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. And with an all or nothing addict brain, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to sponsor this person for the next 30 years or whatever. And that's not necessarily true at all. And, I have learned through my sponsor that I'm still there to sponsor, but, sometimes they fire me, meaning that they don't call me. And then from a good friend in recovery, he gave me some questions. I know he's spoken on this podcast, but if a person can answer, and check in daily with 5 questions, or text them, and that I know that they're serious, because, a lot of times the follow through isn't there. And if the follow through is not there, then chances are the follow through to actually commit to once a week with me to work on their steps isn't going to happen. So it's kind of like a little process to see where a person is at before they even take on a sponsee, or if that person's really ready to be sponsored.
Yeah, thank you both for those thoughts and insights on that. What this question comes from our audience too, and it's directed to both of you. What does intimacy mean to both of you? How do you define intimacy?
Well, I love the definition. It says intimacy is into me, you see. And what does that really look like? I'll give you we live on a farm, and my son raises peacocks, and he brings in eggs every night right now, many, many peacock eggs. So what does intimacy and vulnerability look like? So if I have this peacock egg and I'm handing it to her and I'm telling her about my day, about a frustration or a disturbance that I had in my day, and she takes it loving and kind, she's let me be vulnerable with her. If she comes back, which I did this, if she comes to me with her egg and I go, can you please get to the point? I just smashed that egg and it went everywhere over both of us, and not much intimacy there. It just puts that wall between us. So to me, it's all about being vulnerable.
Yeah, and when we're able to communicate in a healthy way, physical and sexual intimacy becomes part of it. In my mind, I had it completely backwards before. When I was in my addiction, I thought that sex was intimacy, those behaviors. I've learned now that is just, a gift that comes from the vulnerability that we share in our relationship. And there's times still today that, if we have any halts going on or life is just really full, then we know that we can share with each other to say, and that's part of being vulnerable and intimate, is letting the other person know your needs and where you are at that time. That's what I would say about intimacy. I mean, I see it more as a heart-to-heart connection now more than anything.
Thank you both. Very powerful. All right. Next question is from an anonymous person here in the audience. It says, I am a sexaholic and my spouse and I have been divorced for about 10 months. Do you have any experience, strength, and hope on dealing with my spouse with respect to coming up with a parenting plan where we haven't worked rebuilding trust and collaboration together as she decided to end the marriage?
Yeah, I have a lot of experience in this area with people. I think where it all starts around healthy communicating. maybe getting a couples therapist just to say, hey, how about let's work on healthy communicating. That journey's really tough. What I'm so frustrated sometimes with my anons is we don't give enough space and time for the ick to get through their journey of recovery. So yeah, I would just say be loving and kind to the spouse. And if the person in the SA has a good SA recovery and he has been affected by somebody else's sexual behavior, to join S-Anon, because that's what we do. We learn healthy communicating. We learn how to communicate with people who is toxic. And that changes relationships real quick. So that'll pass.
Yeah, I don't have anything for that one.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kevin and Angie. Another anonymous question. This one's directed to Kevin. Kevin, how should a man handle the first hours or days after discovery that maybe their spouse is an SA or been unfaithful? How should a man handle those first few days?
Well, don't do it the way I did it. I just got my wife drunk every night to find more and more stuff out. I was such a sick puppy. Back then, there was not many guys in S&On, so I didn't really have an opportunity to chat with folks. I think the best thing is I really don't want to hear about discovery right now. I just want time to work on myself, time for her to work on herself. And please remember, discovery comes out down the road in step 8, step 9, when you're trying to, let people know about the harms that they've done to you. So there's really no reason to force a solution if both people are in recovery. If they're not in recovery, I would always say, take it through a therapist and have some type of mentor or mediator going through it together. If they can't do that, then I would really lean into each other's recovery program and just kind of not forcing a solution and just letting the recovery program, take you on that journey. But yeah, for me, I got to know way too much. I wish I wouldn't have. That's no should have, could have, would have. That's what God wanted me to see and hear. But just be really kind to yourself. It doesn't have to force a solution. Look at your motivation and really lean into other people with experience, strength, and hope.
Thank you. All right. Couple other questions here. One of them, I think I'll go ahead and just say anything, but if you have anything to add to this, what's the difference between SA and S-Anon, the different programs? SA is like AA. It's the program for sexaholics, for people who struggle with sexual addiction, with lust. S-Anon is like Al-Anon. It's for those who are affected by that. Do you have anything else to add to that, either Angie or Kevin? Okay, perfect. Next question. Another anonymous one. Do either of you have experience or suggestions surrounding getting a good foundation with the first 3 steps when there is regular reacting, which probably has some chemical, maybe dopamine component? I'm hearing lots of tools in your talk. Thank you. Also, let's hit that one first. Any suggestions on the foundation of the first 3 steps when there's regular reacting in your mind?
So if I hear somebody that is reacting to somebody else's sexual behavior or problem, I really challenge them to ramp up the meetings. How many meetings you're doing every day? Do you have a sponsor? How many people are you calling for service? I think for me, recovery is like standing under a waterfall where water is coming on me 24/7. That's what I want recovery to feel like to me. And I think some of those reactions will get less and less the more a person can do that. And then start doing a little bit of service work. So take it off the ick person and let's put it on helping somebody. Then you start changing your thought process. So that's kind of my thoughts there.
Yeah, I think that, like him with his imagery of the water, early in recovery, there were days when I was just like constantly listening to something on YouTube. Back then, there wasn't a lot of SA stuff 9 years ago. that people could just tap into. So I'd listen to AA things and, just to try and understand what powerlessness meant. And as my journey continued, I continue to know that I'm powerless over everything, people, places, things, sexuality, lust, alcohol, food, whatever fits in the blank. And that's what I encourage my sponsees, just to fill in the blank. And once I understand or start even just, fake it till you make it type thing, just even practice surrendering it. Because I know that if I'm in the middle of it, it's just going to turn into a bigger mess. And so that's kind of how I look at steps 1, 2, 3, but just submerging myself with a sponsor, with meetings, like he said, phone calls, literature. I know from my own experience that I had to completely saturate myself with recovery in every form that I could. And, I had said that, if I work my recovery as much as I worked in my addiction, that I'm going to have a fantastic recovery. And that's kind of how I looked at it, that all the time that went into my addiction is now focused on recovery. And that's what's made it a great recovery for me.
Excellent. All right. Just a couple more questions and we'll wrap this up. Next question is the second half of that first one. Would you suggest doing recovery anyways, regardless of the other person, even when there is a refusal from the other person to discuss their sobriety or recovery?
Absolutely.
1000% yes. I can tell you this. If a person works Al-Anon, I don't care if she's in recovery or not, it's going to affect everybody around me. I have so much experience here. My boys are completely different boys in reacting to me on the way I communicate with them now than prior to recovery. Period. 1000% correct.
I think one of the misconceptions is that, and I've heard this, sometimes people get into recovery to save their marriage or to save a relationship or whatever it is. And in reality, it's to save my life, because I'm the one that wants to change, whether it's my Anon issues or whether it's my addiction issues, whatever issues it is. And, honestly, we've talked about this. I don't know one human that couldn't benefit from all of the gifts from a 12-step program, because it's a spiritual journey is what it is. It helps, just as he said, with communication and just a way of thinking and living life and being present for other people. So it's really not even about the other person. We might get in because of that, but in reality, it's about me and what the type of life I want to live.
Excellent. All right. Before we wrap up, any final words of wisdom from either or both of you?
Yeah, no, I just want to tell you, thank you so much for letting us share. It's an honor to be here. All we could do, or all I could do, is sure hope that, one person can grab a nugget from this journey of ours and, use it in their journey too. So, yeah, very grateful for being here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I feel very blessed to know you and all of the work that you do for all of us addicts. And just, it's a roller coaster. There's going to be great days and there's going to be days it's like, why am I doing this? One question I like to ask myself in the early days is it better than it used to be? Yes. And just to even look for a little tiny glimmer. Is it better? Do I have hope? Like I said earlier, it is a journey and it is a roller coaster, but eventually, at least for me, it's leveled out. And most days it's just like a streamline. And so when something does come along and there is a bump in the road, it's not like I'm going to go completely down the rabbit hole and stay there for who knows how long. I know that I have a choice to get out. And that's what recovery gives me.
Beautiful. Thank you both so much for that fantastic RICO 12 weekly speaker meeting. We really appreciate your shares, Kevin and Angie. Next week, we will hear from Leslie G., who's a first-time RICO 12 speaker, speaking on her experience, strength, and hope in relation to Step 11. I'm looking forward to her talk. And if you want to join in, anybody out there with any questions you may have, come join our WhatsApp group, our WhatsApp community. You can join that by sending me an email at rico12pod@gmail.com. I'll get you linked in there. Now let's launch off into the rest of our day with the 11th step prayer, which one of you two will say for us.
Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, and it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Remember, everybody, there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find God now. Keep coming back. And when you do, come all the way in. Sit all the way down. Let's trudge this road of happy destiny together. Work it. You are worth it.
I've seen stars fall from above. I've fallen in and out of love. I've been high and I've been low. Now I know I just can't do this on my own. I've seen a boy become a man. He got lost without a plan. He's so far away from home. Now I know I just can't do this on my own. Your arms surrounding me. Your touch is grounding me. No longer searching for purpose all alone. 'Cause now I know that I just can't do this on my own. I'm looking for the words to say. You make the world a better place, and I can call that place my home. 'Cause now I know that I just can't do this on my own. Your arms surrounding me. Your touch is grounding me. No longer searching for purpose all alone. 'Cause now I know that I just can't do this on my own. So let me see just what you need to set you free, so we can be. I saw stars fall from above. I fell in and out of love. I got high and I fell low. But now I know that I just can't do this on my own. No, I just can't do this on my own. I just can't do this on my own.